London has Jack the Ripper, a monstrous serial killer whose identity was never discovered. But America has its own killer shrouded in mystery, the Zodiac Killer, who terrorized the San Francisco Bay Area ever since his first victim in 1968. In fact, Zodiac may have had more than 3 times as many victims as his British counterpart. Today on Scream to Screen, we're going to explore Tom Hansen, Zodiac Killer Hunter, and his film, The Zodiac Killer, released in 1971. Believe it or not, the movie was made to trap this cold-blooded human hunter and allow a pizzeria owner to not only be a hero for a day, but sell his motion picture with this once-in-a-lifetime movie stunt. Before we do that, make sure you subscribe to Graveyard Shift and let us know in the comments which true-life horror stories you'd like us to cover in the future. Tom Hansen fled the cold of Minnesota winters and moved to Los Angeles in the 1960s with an eye on the seductive movie industry. His talent and instincts in the fast food industry led him to manage a number of restaurants, including A&W and Chicken Delight. He innovated the chicken franchise by adding pizza to the menu, then moved up to owner of a chain of pizza stores called Pizza Man. Tom had more than 60 locations, TV advertising, and a shot at financial success. But then, fate took a turn for the worse. Graham Loving, a New York underwriter, guaranteed Tom just under $8 million for his franchise, a financial windfall that would offer the pizza man a life of luxury. But Loving went broke before the deal could be made, and Tom was forced to hang it up. But not one to give up without a fight, Tom decided that if Pizza Man was going down, he might as well make a couple of pictures. Tom had some experience in the movie industry. He'd worked on a half-dozen low-budget films, including biker movies like The Hellcats and Outlaw Riders. Tom was an asset mostly because he was the only person who could control the actual bikers hired in the films. He would earn the respect of the fearsome leaders of motorcycle gangs, and the other members would fall in line. This brash, fearless attitude would pay off with the Zodiac Killer. On December 20th, 1968, 17-year-old David Arthur Faraday and 16-year-old Betty Lou Jensen were driving to a Christmas concert at Hogan High School. It was their first date. They decided to skip the concert and drive up to Lake Herman Road, a well-known lover's lane just outside of San Francisco. They'd been parked for almost a half hour when a second car pulled up next to them. The killer shot Faraday in the head, and 5 more bullets riddled the back of Jensen's body as she tried to flee. The Zodiac Killer's murder spree had begun. On July 4, 1969, just 4 miles away from Lake Herman Road at Blur Rock Springs, 19-year-old Michael Mageau and 22-year-old Darlene Farron sat in Farron's car. As midnight approached, a second car pulled up behind them, and the killer stepped out, a 9mm Luger in hand. He plugged 9 bullets into the couple, then turned and walked away. Despite being shot in the face, neck, and chest, Mageau managed to survive the attack and was able to offer the first description of the killer, a man about 26 to 30 years old, weighing around 200 pounds with short, light brown, curly hair. In all, 7 victims of the Zodiac Killer were identified, while the killer himself claimed to have murdered 37 people. 2 of the 7 victims survived, including Michael Mageau, and 20-year-old Brian Hartnell, who was forced at gunpoint to tie up his friend, 22-year-old Cecilia Shepard. The killer then tied him up and repeatedly stabbed the couple. Shepard fell into a coma and died at the hospital. On August 1, 1969, the Vallejo Times-Herald, the San Francisco Chronicle, and the San Francisco Examiner each received a nearly identical letter, claiming credit for the murders. The writer demanded the letters be published on the front page of each newspaper, or he would, quote, cruise around all weekend killing lone people in the night, then move on to kill again, until I end up with a dozen people over the weekend. Each letter contained a third of what has become known as the 408 symbol cryptogram, named after the 408 symbols the combined letters contain. The Chronicle published its third of the cryptogram in the next day's edition, but on the 4th page, not the front page, along with a quote from Vallejo Police Chief Jack E. Stilt saying, "We're not satisfied that the letter was published by the murderer." The promised murders didn't happen, and all of San Francisco gave a sigh of relief. Eventually, all 3 parts of the cryptogram were published. The San Francisco Examiner received a second letter on August 7, 1969 that began with, "Dear Editor, this is the Zodiac speaking." This is the first time the killer had offered his alias. It included more details about the killings with the promise that when the police crack the code, they will have me. On August 8, 1969, Donald Hardin and his wife Betty submitted the 408 translation. Donald was a North Salinas schoolteacher with a lifelong interest in codes and code breaking, but it was Betty who came up with the first solution. She guessed that the ego of the killer meant it would likely begin with the word I, and that the phrase "I like killing" would show up in the message somewhere. Her assumption proved correct. The message made a reference to The Most Dangerous Game, a story about a man who hunted his fellow human beings and the belief that those he killed would be his slaves in the afterlife. But the cryptogram offered no clues that would help identify the man who wrote the message. A total of 18 letters were sent, usually to newspapers, but occasionally to private citizens. On October 14, 1969, the Chronicle received a letter that included a swatch of Paul Stine's shirt. 29-year-old Stine was a cab driver who picked up the Zodiac killer and was shot in the head for his effort. The murderer was spotted by 3 teenagers while he was wiping down the cab, and the teens provided another description to police. This description would prove useful to Tom Hansen as he set his trap in an effort to stop the murders. 1970 came and went, with the Zodiac killer no closer to being caught than he was after his first puzzling cryptogram was published. Tom Hansen, watching his pizza empire collapse around him and looking for a movie outlet to hold on to, came up with a bold idea. What if I do a movie and set a trap to catch him? I thought he'd go see a movie about himself. He'd have to. Before the trap was complete, the film's co-author, Ray Cantrell, would almost suffocate, and Tom would come face to face with death personified. Using the abundant information found in the newspapers, as well as an interview with Paul Avery, a jumpy journalist who feared he was a possible future victim of the Zodiac killer, the script was quickly sketched together. The film was shot in just a few weeks and edited in even less time, at a production cost of around $13,000. Tom was unconcerned. The goal was to use the killer's ego to pull him in. For the movie premiere, Tom booked the RKO Theater in San Francisco, the Zodiac killer's own killing field, for a weekend premiere. Their target wouldn't even need to travel out of town to come to a movie premiere that he himself would be the subject of. With an ego larger than the Golden Gate Bridge, Tom felt sure the killer himself would be at the premiere. With the movie made, the opening date set and advertised, there was just one trick left. Each theatergoer would receive a sweepstakes entry card with the words, "I think the Zodiac kills because," then asked to write their answer and drop it into a large box. On the podium stood a Kawasaki motorcycle, the tantalizing prize of a raffle. To enter, all you needed to do was fill out the card and drop it in the box. Though it looked solid enough, inside the box was one of the 6 conspirators: Tom, his co-writer Ray, the lead actor of the film Hal Reed, and 3 other crew members each took turns sitting in the box so they could analyze the handwriting of each card to compare it to the Zodiac killer's own writing. When they weren't in the box, they were stationed in the projectionist's room, outside the theater, or throughout the lobby. A police drawing of the suspect had been circulating in the city for months, ever since the murder of Paul Stine, and all attention was devoted to finding this man. At one point during the screening, Ray Cantrell found himself close to death, his air supply nearly gone. Tom had brought a freezer into the lobby of the theater, the idea that the small vent on its side would allow Ray to make better observations of the crowd, focusing on anyone who resembled the widely circulated police sketch. What seemed a good idea almost turned fatal, and Ray nearly passed out. He was able to alert his friends with a light signal and freed. The letter podium was left unattended, an unfortunate circumstance since a card was dropped into the empty box with the words, "I am the Zodiac, I was here," written on it. The final night of the premiere, Tom Hansen found himself in need of a bathroom break. Loath to interrupt his surveillance, his needs outweighed the plot, and he found himself standing alone in the front of the urinal. He thought he heard the door open, but when he turned around, no one was there. "You know, real blood wouldn't come out of a body like that." Tom's heart almost stopped. A man stood next to him, appearing almost like a ghost. He was so silent. Tom zipped up his pants and looked into the face from the police sketch. The eyes, the hair, the mouth, all the same. Son of a bitch, it's him, thought Tom, doing his best to stay calm. In the lobby, the 6 men surrounded the man. Tom looked right in his eyes and said, "Paul Stine was my brother." He hoped naming the victim would rattle the man they thought to be the killer, but he didn't even flinch, instead engaging the men in conversations about shared experiences in the military. No one had the legal authority to stop him, so they watched helplessly as the man they suspected to be the Zodiac killer walked away. Afraid the authorities might shut down the whole plot if they were alerted ahead of time, they failed to arrange for a policeman to be on hand. In 1974, Hansen came up with a new plan. He sent a card to the address the man had left on the card at the theater, saying he had won a prize. Avoiding his last error, he had detectives deliver the package, then say a mistake had been made. This way, they would get fingerprints on the package when they took it back. But no fingerprints were found. Eventually, Tom Hansen had to give up his chase. Though the Zodiac Killer hasn't killed since 1969 and his letters stopped in 1974, he has neither been identified nor captured. The Zodiac has been a constant fascination for the ensuing decades. Serial killer and true crime aficionados still pore over the facts of the case, attempting to crack it. It even inspired a big-budget movie, directed by David Fincher and starring Jake Gyllenhaal. And yet, there's still no definitive ending to the story of the Zodiac. There are plenty of suspects, including the man Tom Hansen almost snared in his trap. But the identity of the Zodiac Killer remains a mystery to this very day. So what do you think? Did Tom Hansen come face to face with the real Zodiac Killer? Was the note left in the box at the theater written by a prankster messing with Hansen and his fellow filmmakers? What do you think might have happened to the killer we know as the Zodiac? Let us know in the comments below if you've got the guts. Please be sure to like and subscribe to Graveyard Shift. And as always, check back next time to find out what else will make it from scream to screen.